I have to filter
Here we
myself,
go.
right?
All right, yeah, now everyone behave.
PG.
We're getting started. No, it's recording just in case you need to know. Thank you everyone for joining our monthly virtual career series hosted by your Comm Alumni Council. We're so excited to have you all here. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get started. For those that joined after I just mentioned this, we welcome you to come on video and be a part of the event that way. If not, you're welcome to stay there. Though throughout, we encourage questions, comments, suggestions via the chat. So please let this be interactive. Alexei is very interactive, very outgoing. I'm sure we'll have a lot of great content to share with us today. But please, use the chat function while he's going through this or at any point.
And Alex, as well,
yeah.
I have a few breaks within the presentation as well that I'll take questions there too. I think there's a raise hand function too, maybe on this. So if you have a question while I'm speaking and you want to raise your hand, totally fine. If you want to interrupt me, that's good as well. I'm good with anything.
Interrupts him all the time. No. Here we go. One more thing before I turn it over to Alexei. Just as a note, this is again part of our series of these events. So this is one of many. We've been having a lot of fun with these. It's just our way to be able to connect with you all virtually while we can't be together in person. We have a lot of great stuff that comes out on social media. We're going to be providing some more information on our virtual career day coming up here soon. But in the interim, we've got monthly virtual career series, and we hope to continue to do these even beyond COVID in that day when we're all back in person. We still want to do this as it's an opportunity to get together from far and wide. So this is, again, March 10th. We're here with Alexei, and we've got some others coming up. Here's the whole series for 2021 so far. So make note of April 14th and May 26th, careers in event management and careers in public relations. And then we're going to do a June date of some sort. We're thinking maybe a best of series as a Q&A of all the past participants in 2021, but that will take shape as we go forward. So again, mark your calendars. We'd love to see you at a future event. Those registration links will go out a little bit closer too. With that, I'm going to introduce Alexei. Alexei has been a member of our Comm Council for a few years now. Very active participant, heads up our development team, who helps us with membership dues, our partnership with the UCSB Development Department, and just a great member of our council family. So he is going to share his wondrous experience in the world of advertising, digital marketing, and all that good stuff. I'm going to turn it over to him. I will be monitoring the chat as mentioned, so throw stuff in there. But Alexei, take it away.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate the kind words. It's always a little bit of an ego booster. I know I have difficulty carrying myself and my ego through the front door of my apartment. So, please don't pad that for me. But anyways, it's great to have everybody on the call. Thanks so much for joining. I know a number of you have already linked in with me, which is great. The rest of you, please feel free to connect with me. I'm more than happy to do so and help you in any way that I can. So before we get started, there's a decent amount of content that I want to get through. But I just wanted to mention that I will be providing a takeaway from this where some of the job titles that I put out there for people to take a look at when they're looking for roles in this industry and some other tips as well will be given to you. So don't feel like you need to write it down and you'll never see it again. And as well, I would like to start by kind of gauging what everyone's interest is here. So I know that I said advertising, digital marketing, and product. It's kind of a catch-all for everything that I do right now. So if you guys can react with like a thumbs up, who is here to learn about advertising and digital marketing? Okay, I see one. I see a bunch here. Okay, and if you guys can unthumbs up here so that I can see who is interested in hearing about product. I know it's not necessarily a communications focused career path. Okay, a few. All right, perfect. And then in the chat as well, if you guys can kind of if you guys can note what words come to mind when you think of digital marketing and advertising, and then what words kind of come to mind with product. And I'll take a look at that a little bit later so that I can make sure that I touch on those. So with that, I am going to get started. Let's share the screen here. Share. Alrighty, can everybody see my screen? Yep, thumbs up. All right, I'm going to present here. Okay, alrighty, so again, welcome. Excited to be here and excited to kind of walk you through what it is that I do, how I got here. And like I said, if you've got any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat or raise your hand here. So I am going to talk about what I have done and what I'm currently doing. I'm going to kind of breeze through it so that we've got enough time for questions. I know this session goes till 6:45, but I'm more than happy to stay on as long as possible if there's still questions that you guys have. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here. So question that everybody likes to think is, who doesn't love talking about themselves? I certainly like talking about myself. So when I was a student at UCSB, I studied really hard. By the way, there's me right there. Lots of time at the library, lots of time in class. No, I'm actually just kidding. I did spend a lot of time in the library. This is a picture of my favorite view from the quiet floor at the top, where I was able to get the majority of my work done. Living Oceanside DP with 9 other roommates, you don't really get too much done in your house. Fortunately, I live with 10 engineers, so they actually did have to do some work, and so that did help somewhat, but definitely needed to escape to kind of get work done. I personally did not start out as a comm major. I actually started as a biz econ with an emphasis in accounting. And I did that up until my spring quarter of sophomore year. So I was just telling Ron Rice that the kind of come to Jesus moment for me was when I was failing out of Econ 1, and I called my parents and I was like, what on earth do? I am failing literally the #1 class that needs to happen. I was doing fine in accounting, and my mom was like, well, why don't you take Comm 1, see if Comm majors is something you want to do. I'm like, oh my gosh, my roommates are going to give me so much grief for being a Comm major and all this other stuff. And she said, and my mom told me, she said, well, go to your accounting class tomorrow and look around. These are the people that you are going to spend the rest of your life with. And I came back and I was like, Mom, I'm going to be a comm major. So, and lo and behold, it turned out to be exactly what was the perfect fit for me. I really love doing what I'm doing. And one of the reasons why I joined the Comm Council is because this major and this degree really is what kind of set me up for success and got me my job. So, so after I graduated, it took me a couple months to actually land a job. I was working as a marketing consultant, I'm going to put that in air quotes, for our next door neighbor. I was living back with my parents at the time and did so for a while. And he owned a financial advisory firm. So it was unpaid, and I was working like kind of spiffing up the financial advisors' LinkedIn pages and writing some white papers that were to be distributed internally. And really the focus there was just to show prospective employers that someone did want to hire me on. And I am not just sitting on my butt the entire day. I'm actually working and doing something while I'm looking for a job. And that really definitely set me apart and helped me out. So I landed a job at a company called Adara. At the time, they were a startup in Mountain View doing advertising specifically for the travel industry. I joined as a campaign manager, which is literally someone who goes into, at that point, they had their own software and executed advertising campaigns, typing in who we needed to target, how we were gonna, where we were gonna serve our ads, and then optimizing those kinds of things. And One of the things that I really liked about that, and being employee number 40, I think it was, really gave me a lot of exposure to a number of other groups within that company. So you know how everybody says you got to wear multiple hats? This was certainly a case where I was working directly with product and directly with the engineers to help them improve the existing product, and working with the product team to create new products, and then working with data science to help, tune what they call their algorithms and their models to help make campaigns perform better, working with marketing to help kind of explain what it is that we do, and then finance about billing issues, and then having weekly meetings with executives in the C-suite. So you don't really get that kind of exposure when you join a large company. And we're going to kind of go into the pros and cons of startups versus larger companies, but it really helped me kind of decide what it was that I wanted to do, and really helped me make a meaningful impact as someone who just started out at the company. So as I continued to kind of progress there, I then became kind of a team lead, where I had a few people that were sort of reporting to me, but I didn't actually do any sort of performance reviews or manage their salaries or anything like that. But it was just to give me that exposure to how to properly manage individuals. And as that continued to grow, and as I became more proficient there, I ended up having my own team of 10 individuals out in Palo Alto, which is where this company is headquartered. And that was great. Then we really focused on, building out that entire team, building out the training process, career pathing, all of the stuff that established companies already have taken care of. These were areas that I was able to get that kind of exposure and learn how to do that, which was really phenomenal. The other cool thing about this company is as I was progressing, so the company was growing, and we were growing internationally. So the first expansion that we had was out in Ireland. And so we had our European headquarters out in Dublin, which for a while was kind of its own separate entity. But while the company was trying to become profitable, that piece of the puzzle was the last thing that needed to fall in place in order for us to achieve that profitability. And there was a lot of issues with cultural differences and miscommunications, and kind of playing telephone back and forth between management in Dublin and management in the US. And so one day it was at 5 p.m. on a Friday. I was at the water cooler filling up my water bottle, getting ready to go home for the weekend. And the VP of our group came up to me and he goes, "So I know that we've talked about moving you out to Ireland for an extended period. Are you still interested in that?" I'm like, yeah, sure. He goes, "Great, you leave Monday. Pack enough for a month." And sure enough, packed my stuff up, schlepped out over to Dublin with the only instructions of figure out what on earth is going on over there. There was no management at that time. I had to come in, run the office essentially, and it really kind of pushed me to my limits, in the sense that for 6 hours of my day, I had no points of contact in the US to escalate issues with. I had to figure it out all on my own. So that was a very, very interesting learning experience. I worked my butt off. My days would start at 8 a.m. Dublin time. At 2 p.m., the East Coast would wake up, and my East Coast day would start. At 5 p.m., it's 9 a.m. Pacific time. My West Coast day would start. At 8 p.m., it's lunchtime here in California, so I would get dinner. And then I would continue working on till 11 p.m., which is like 3 o'clock here, and I would sign off and rinse and repeat. And while it was a grind, it was an amazing experience learning how other regions and how other countries operate, and their kind of how they tackle problems and the way that they approach work in general. So I came back to the US, and I had done such a good job that they said, "Okay, fine, let's expand your team." So we started hiring people in Chicago, started hiring people in New York. I was sort of de facto managing folks in Dublin. And then we had an office in Singapore and an office in Dubai, and I had individuals reporting to me in each one of those offices. So like they said at the British Empire, the sun never set. The sun never set really on my team. Again, starting the mornings at 5 a.m. to get that 2 p.m. Dublin time call. And I remember getting on the phone and, you know, everyone's super chipper. They just had lunch, like, oh, Alexei, how you doing? So great to hear from you. And I would just go, it is still dark outside. Let's please start this meeting. That would get everyone to kind of come to attention. And then, yeah, US Day would happen. And then I would finish my day at, you know, 6 o'clock with a phone call with Singapore, and then 9 o'clock with a phone call with Dubai. And again, really amazing experience. But at some point it was time for me to leave. I had done that for 4+ years, almost 5. And so I landed a job at a company that's called Publicis. And what they do is coupons, believe it or not. Some of you will know it as the freestanding inserts that everybody gets on Fridays in their mail that, you know, it's like 2 pages full of coupons from a company called Retail Me Not. I worked at the company for a year and could not figure out how to remove myself from that list. So I'm sorry I apologize for everybody who still gets those mailers and tosses them straight in the trash, but you would be surprised how effective those are at driving purchases, really. So I came on to rebuild their campaign management and ad operations teams. So I had the first 2 months was getting acclimated to the company, what they did, how we needed to kind of build out that team, what it needed to look like in a future state, present it to management and the executive team, get sign off, and then do it. And this company was headquartered out in Michigan. Funny story. The first time I flew out to Detroit, it was in October, and I rented a car, and there was a ice scraper in the back seat. And I was like, it's October, there's no way I'm gonna need this. And being a California boy, I am completely out of my element in snow. And overnight it rained. It landed, it was a really stormy night. And I parked my car outside of my hotel, woke up the next morning, and apparently it had dipped below freezing overnight. And I came outside and my entire front windshield was sheet ice. And I had no idea how to get it off. I was like, what the heck do you do with this scraper? Do you, like, you know, bang it and try and break the ice? I know you're not supposed to pour water on it because it's going to break the glass and all this other stuff. So I literally had to call my friend who lives in Boston. It's like, please help me. I'm late for my meeting where I'm meeting everybody for the first time. What on earth do I do? She's like, sit in your car, turn your defroster on, wait for it to thaw, and then you'll be fine. You're going to freeze your butt off, but I'll keep you company. So I showed up late to this meeting, and I walked in, and everybody stops talking and starts looking at me. And the guy who was running the meeting looks at me and goes, you better have a damn good excuse for why you're late. I was like, I am a useless California boy, and my windshield was completely iced over, and I had no idea how to get it off. The entire room starts laughing. All is well, but I digress. Anyways, so 2 months into that, my tenure there, I had presented all this stuff. We were about to get the final stamp and go with this rebuilding plan. And then we purchased a company called MaxPoint, and everything went on hold. The priority was to integrate the company, and you'd be surprised that 2 companies that do the exact same thing work very, very differently. And so you kind of have to come up with a way that as the companies are merging and as their client lists are being integrated, how you're not going to disrupt your client service, right? Because ultimately they are the ones who pay your checks. So we need to make sure that everybody's happy. So I was put on the integration team, and that meant a lot of travel out to North Carolina. I had just moved to San Francisco for this job. I got my apartment. I was really looking forward to touching base with all of my friends that I knew from UCSB, especially my fraternity who lived out here. And then I was traveling constantly. Asked my parents. There was a time where we went down to Napomo for my uncle's 90th birthday on a Saturday. And literally that Sunday morning, my parents had to get up with me at 6 a.m., drive me all the way to San Jose so that I could hop on a flight and catch a flight out to Raleigh. And I was traveling sometimes almost every week. And this was like 9 months. So I didn't know anybody here in San Francisco. My best friends were pilots and flight attendants and TSA people. I lived in the airport essentially. So I got a little bit burned out. Burnout is a real thing. It happens. Some of us who are working right now at home are definitely experiencing it. So it was a little bit of a reprieve when we realized that we put ourselves out of a job, and they told us all in San Francisco to pack our bags and get out of there. So I took a gap year. I was like, I'm not ready to start looking for a job yet. I need some time to decompress. I need to meet some people out here in San Francisco. I joined some sports teams. I connected with my friends that I knew from college, and really just took some time to truly think about what it was that I actually wanted to do with the rest of my career. So it was a little bit of kind of, hippie soul searching, but it was something that was really important for, kind of the path that I'm on right now. So I spent some time enjoying what is San Francisco, met a lot of great individuals, and at the same time, I was also studying for the GMAT. Business school has kind of always been in the back of my mind. Both of my parents have their MBA. My grandfather has their MBA. All of the advice from them was, yep, you should definitely go to business school. Then as I was transitioning out of Velasas, all of the C-level executives who were getting paid like millions of dollars a year at this gigantic company, I was asking them, look, is this really something that you think is my next step? All of them were like, oh yeah, absolutely. I went to Stanford, I went to Harvard, I went to Wharton. Let me know, I'll write you a rec, no problem. So I figured with all of that support, it would be remiss for me not to try. So I started studying. The language and the reading and all that stuff, I was fine with. The math, I'm garbage, just absolutely just awful. And I needed to really focus on that. And that's kind of what I looked like while I was studying this stuff. And again, going back to some of that soul searching, it's like, really, is this what I want to do? I spoke to some of my friends who more recently had graduated with an MBA, were working in the consulting field, which is something I was kind of interested in doing. And they said, if consulting is not what you want to do, it sounds like it may be actually a paid decrease from what you've got. Don't worry about it. Figure out what it is that you want to do for the rest of your life. And so I did. I looked at my resume. What was the experience that I needed for jobs that I wanted to get to in the future that I don't have right now? And that was advertising agency experience. I always worked on what we call the vendor side. I'll explain that a little bit later. But I did not have agency experience. So I applied for a job at Publicis Group, Publicis, depends what coast you're on. That is how it gets pronounced there. But I landed a really sweet job at a company within there called Apex Exchange, which started as someone who was running the office in San Francisco. Business was declining out in the West Coast. They consolidated out in Chicago and New York, and I've always had product kind of on the top of my mind. And so they moved me into the products and partnership group, which is where I am now. And I can talk a little bit more about that later, but I do want to get into some of the meat of this presentation here. So before I get into any industry information, does anybody have any pressing questions? Is there anything in the chat, Alex?
Nothing in the chat, but anyone want to come off mute and share or post something now? Annabelle?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I feel like I used to always have this misconception that like I would graduate, I would find a company, find a job, and that would be like where I'd work forever, And so, seeing as you kind of went around to lots of different places, and like I see that's kind of like what usually happens to many people. Like, how do you know when it's your time to move on? Like, how do you know when you've reached that point where you need to go somewhere else?
That is a terrific question. And it's something, unfortunately, that you can only answer for yourself. For me, at Adara, there was some really serious concerns about the health of the business, and also the way that management was treating their employees. And just ultimately, I wasn't growing anymore. And I just felt like I had kind of reached my potential there. And if I really wanted to grow more, I was really going to have to be kind of an a-hole about it and start putting people out of a job. And that's just not who I am. So that's why I decided to leave there. Velasas made the the decision for me. They told me to get out, fired me and all 65 people in that office. But really, I would say it's where you feel that you are no longer growing and you are no longer learning. If you reach that cap and that point, it's time to go and move on and look for another job. Also, unfortunately, jumping is the easiest way sometimes to get a pay raise, but you really need to be super, super sure that that's what you want to do. An extra 10K here or there may sound great initially, but when you get in and you realize it's a total dumpster fire at that company, and the reason why they're paying people so much is because they need to entice people else otherwise, that's where you don't necessarily want to go for that. So there's ways to navigate that. I'm happy to chat with you on that, but it's really dependent on how you feel and whether you're still growing and learning or not.
Thank you.
Awesome. I saw something light up in the chat, Alex. Is there anything on there?
Oh, it's just me adding commentary. I said I very much agree with you that, growth as a barometer for when to leave is important. But I think can be a false conflation of, well, I can't move up. I can't get a promotion, so I'm not growing. And I think that's the nuance that you were speaking to. And that's the personal part, right? You could get many, many promotions and not grow. So making sure you're equating growth with learning, I think, is important. And if you can't learn from people around you or your team, then, as you said, I think it's time to move on. So I'm in agreement.
Totally appreciate that. All right, so really quickly, let's kind of just touch on how all of these roles kind of intertwine here. So digital marketing is sort of the catch-all for anything marketing, essentially. Advertising is marketing. It's just a very specific type of marketing, but digital marketing includes PR, social media marketing, product marketing, Marcom, direct, advertising. It's a gigantic list where, again, it's just kind of like an umbrella where everything else underneath it sits. Advertising is very specific in that, I say here, leveraging digital and traditional advertising channels. So social media and programmatic advertising on your web pages, YouTube ads, print ads, television ads, connected television ads, streaming audio ads, radio ads, like all of that stuff is being used to drive a specific business objective for your client, whether it's I need them to know about a new product that I've got. I want sales on this new product that I've got. I want people to listen about how awesome I am or what great work I've done for celebrity, whatever it may be, right? It's a vehicle for companies to send a message to the consumer. Whereas digital marketing, some of it can be internal marketing where you're like creating, collateral that's being sent only to your clients. It's not external, like direct to the consumer. So kind of a catch-all there. And then product is a completely separate entity from all of those, where it's really the development and the strategy behind creating products that are either being used internally within your company or being sold externally and being used by other clients that you have. So this is kind of how it looks. You've got your digital marketing as your umbrella. You got your advertising as that little small portion of it, and then product sits out here on the side. I'm a visual learner. This is kind of a better way for me to kind of understand how this works. Day to day, this is a question that I get a lot when I'm, mentoring folks on our digital mentoring program. There's your plug right there, Alex. So feel free to book time with me. I'm more than happy to chat with any of you further. But this is a question that I get a lot. So, it really depends kind of where you're working and what kind of job you've got. But from an entry level perspective, it's literally you come in, you've got your prioritization for your day, which normally your clients always take precedence. So it's whatever work that you have to take care of. And that usually means by answering emails that have come in before you started, whether something's on fire, whether you need to respond to a question to give an answer or whatnot. So it's always really like log on, open your email, see what needs to be taken care of immediately, and then moving on. Then you've got your meetings for the day, which can be either internal, so within your team, within the company, whatever it may be, and then externally with clients as well. So whether you're walking them through a media plan or a deck or whatever it may be, meetings, unfortunately, it's an industry where it is relatively meeting heavy, and which is why I'm going to mention when I go through the courses that within the comm major that will be helpful for you. Presentation skills is a huge benefit. If you can speak to clients and present clearly, you are going to be miles ahead of everybody else. So that is super important. Then you've got your to-do list. For me, I like to be organized that way. So it's crossing off your to-do list, prioritizing based on what needs to be done immediately. Whatever it may be, media plans, decks, troubleshooting, all that stuff. And then you've got your project worked on your side, which you're working on, for your boss or whatever, to kind of learn a little bit more about what they do, or just kind of help to make your impact be seen throughout the organization. With product, what I like about it is it's very project-based. So you don't have a very rigid schedule of things that you need to get done every single day. So long as you get your projects done on time, you're grand, right? So for me, again, it's that to-do list, prioritizing tasks based on what needs to be taken care of immediately and what are the most urgent asks. There are still internal and external meetings that you have to talk with. You're talking to your executive team and pitch and explain to them what you're working on right now and what products you've got down the pipe. You're working with your sales team and telling them, okay, these are the new products that we've launched, and here's the talk track that you need to go to market to explain what it is that we do. And then you got your external meetings where you're meeting with companies that have various solutions that fit within your product suite. So today I was meeting with an agency that does media specifically targeted to the Asian community here in the US. So they do translation, and they do ads specifically in demographic areas where there's a high percentage of Asian Americans that live. The last couple of weeks, I've been crushed with a project where we're coming up with a product for e-commerce. So buying things on a Walmart and Kroger and Safeway and things like that. So you're meeting with companies that have these sort of solutions out there to see whether they, it's something that you want to contract with them with. So that's kind of, sort of my day-to-day. If you're a project manager, or product manager rather, you're working on internal products that your engineering team is building out for you. And I do some of that work as well. And that's really mainly internally focused, where you are speccing out what that product's going to look like, working with the engineers to QA test and take a look at the UX and the UI. Is this something that is going to be sellable? Is this what you were really looking for in the beginning? So that's kind of how that operates. I saw a couple questions. I've got 15 minutes here left. I know, Alex, you're going to be the time police. I'm going to put those questions towards the end, because this piece here, I'm going to breeze through, since these are all available in the takeaways that you will be able to access. You can access now. So when it comes to job searching and skills, I'm going to put some titles up here, but really the main piece of advice that I can give you is apply for any job that asks for 1 to 3 years experience, right? Every single job is asking for 5+ years experience, experience managing multiple clients and agencies and whatnot. And oh, by the way, it's an entry-level associate position. Like, that's nonsense, to be honest. Apply for all of those jobs. They put that there because their recruiting team is the one who's writing that job description. But ultimately, coming from someone who has hired for those roles, we're just looking for really hungry college students who can prove that they've got a good work ethic, that they have accomplished things in college, whether it's projects or whatnot, and that you're willing to roll your sleeves up and get done what needs to be done. So anything that's in the analyst or associate or strategist or coordinator level, both for digital marketing, excuse me, I've got the hiccups here, and advertising is where you should be looking at. And so I've got my cursor here. Anything like campaign analyst, campaign manager, programmatic special, These two here are going to be what we call the vendor side. So these are companies that do digital advertising that aren't necessarily a part of an advertising agency. So agencies contract with some of these companies and they work with them essentially to reach the client objectives that they need to hit. So that's where I started, and then I moved into the agency role. This media associate, account coordinator, account associate, specialist, ad ops specialist, that's more the agency side. So if you're looking to get into an agency, which is a great career path, that's where you want to look. Now, product, this is where I'm going to kind of, put a little asterisk on there, is as a comm major, unfortunately, this is really difficult to get into from the onset. For me, it took me a while to get into it, but if you can show, when you join a company, it's much easier at a startup, your drive and your willingness to understand user experience, user interfaces, improving products, etc. That's how you can kind of wiggle into that space. Product analyst, you can kind of, try and make a case for yourself, but a lot of those roles are asking for either an engineering background, a mathematics background, a science background, because it is a very highly technical field. Associate product managers, if you're a coder and you're doing coding on the side or whatever, that's where you should look. If that's a skill that you don't have, it's not something that's absolutely necessary when you move in later. I don't know how to code. I don't know how to read code, but I know how to speak with engineers and how to get stuff done with them. And that's really my strength. And that's really our collective strength as communication majors, is being able to communicate with engineers who are notoriously difficult to communicate with. So when it comes to a startup versus an established company, at a startup, you have you can have an immediate impact when you start, because there's fewer people and you get larger exposure with executives and management and the C-suite. So greater visibility right from the get-go. Unfortunately, if you like rigid structure, you're not going to get it there. There's a lot of ambiguity when it comes to training and onboarding. You kind of just got to figure things out on your own. And it's easier to move up the ladder there, because there are new roles and new positions being created constantly, especially if it's growing, where you can kind of express your interest to your manager of a field that you want to get into. Now, on an established company, the opposite is true. It can be difficult to establish your brand right from the get-go. You really have to kind of work at that to show how amazing that you are. But onboarding, training, and operations are going to be very rigid and streamlined. So if you need that rigid structure, that's the place for you. Unfortunately, the companies move very slowly. I've been learning that for the last 2 years, and I continue to learn that, startups will just be like, let's get a product out there. We need to get something in the market now. I don't care how it looks, just get it out there. Larger companies are like, let's make sure this is all thoroughly vetted. Let's make sure legal's taking a look at the language. Let's make sure that finance is approved, all this. So it's just a lot of touch points and red tape that need to be kind of checked off before things happen. So that's kind of one of the downsides. But for your career, that path is already in place there with clear timelines and goals of how you can get there. So that is a positive as well. Skills that are going to help you get a job. For digital marketing and advertising, it's all about professional writing, presentation skills, and time management. With digital marketing, graphic design is usually a plus. Creative storytelling is a plus, because you're working in PowerPoint, you're working in Photoshop, all of those things. Whereas advertising, you're doing a lot of negotiation with clients and with vendors. You're very heavily involved in Excel and PowerPoint. So that's kind of the difference between those two. And then product, it's all about managing your time, managing project timelines, having an interest in technology, and potentially coding as well. Here are some courses. I've put them in bold, the ones where I really think are super important. 117 Persuasion, I would put up there as well as something that's important here. Of course, I have to pitch our wonderful Ron Rice and Karen's marketing communications class. I got a B, I think, in marketing communications, and I still have a job in marketing and advertising. So if you don't get an A+, don't feel discouraged. But diffusion of innovations was something that was really important and kind of helped with the product side of it, where it really talks about how, how new products really gain traction in the marketplace. But this one right here, advertising literacy and advertising capstones, these are a must if you are looking to get a job in advertising. The project that I did with the advertising capstone class got me my first job at Adara, because they didn't care about what projects I had done at, with the marketing consulting or whatever, but advertising capstone, we created an advertising agency for real clients in Santa Barbara, and that's all they wanted to talk about, and literally what got me my job. So that is a huge, huge plus. Electronic media and policy and regulation, I don't think this was there while I was a student, but this is also something that I think is extremely important in digital marketing and advertising, especially as privacy becomes a really, really important part within this industry. Here's a question as well that I get a lot is, how do you read Glassdoor reviews? My advice to you is take them with a grain of salt. Most people who are posting negative reviews about a company are pissed off and want to kind of find a way to get back at the company by doing so. Then you kind of get this this snowball effect where you get only negative reviews from people who are pissed off. People who are happy are not going on Glassdoor and talking about how happy they are. And so when you get a company that's got a poor rating on Glassdoor, and I can say this completely truthfully because I've worked at companies who have done this, HR departments will give incentives to employees to write positive reviews to artificially inflate their Glassdoor rating. It's shady, it's poor, and it's a company that you do not want to work with. So the way to get past all of that is take note of it, read the negatives, read the positives, find someone that you are connected with at that company, whether it's via UCSB, whether it's through like a second or third connection that you can need an introduction to, where you can reach out to them and say, hey, I know Glassdoor reviews are kind of iffy sometimes. I've been reading some things that are negative about this company as well as some positives. Can you verify whether these are true or not? And I did that once when I was applying for a company called Optimizely, where it's like, I knew someone, or I didn't know someone, but I saw that they went to UCSB, sent them a note, hey, it always gets a response when you start the note with, hey, go Gauchos. And I just said, hey, look, I've seen that there's some negative reviews here. I wanted to chat with you specifically about whether those are true or not. She's like, oh yeah, no problem. Let me know what time worked for you, and I'll touch base. I wasn't too happy that she let HR know that she spoke with me afterwards, but that's another story. But do not ask the hiring managers or the recruiters whether those reviews are positive or not, because they will give you the answer that's in their best interest, not in yours. So find someone who works at that company to ask those questions specifically. And then when in doubt, check out the work environment when we go into the office. It sounds like, what a time to be alive, right? And how people behave when you're interviewing with them. If they're stone-faced, don't care, feel like this is a chore, walk away. You do not want to be at that place. It's going to be miserable. It's going to suck. On the other side, if people are really happy, really bright, really friendly, that's a positive indication that it's a cool company to work with, a great work environment, and maybe those negative reviews really are just people who are upset and want to get back at the company. So what to look for when you're interviewing with these folks? The most important thing really is this first bullet point. Does your potential manager seem genuinely interested in helping you succeed and grow? I have had really bad managers where I kind of flipped it on their head and learned what not to do as a manager from them, which is okay experience, but you really don't want to put yourself in that position in the first place. So really ask them, what is it that you do specifically to help new hires find their place at this company, establish themselves in their role, and move up within the organization? That is a very important question to ask, and something that they should be able to answer for you. If they can't answer it, I don't know. Right. So as I had mentioned before, the disinterest versus the excitement during your interview, really, really important. And the last, when we go back in person, if you walk in there and it is dead silent and all you can hear is people swearing or whatever, you don't want to be there too, right? The environment and what you kind of perceive that to be tells a lot about the organization and the culture that they have there. So if there's a lot of energy, people are laughing, they're having fun, they're throwing balls around, all that kind of stuff, it's a cool place to work. Again, silent, you can hear a pin drop. I wouldn't say walk out the door, take the interview, get the experience, but just use, keep that in the back of your mind when you're evaluating that company if they give you an offer. And these are the last two slides. I know we're at time here. Interview do's and don'ts. Research the company that you are applying for and ask intelligent questions about their products and offerings. An intelligent question about their product and offering is, hey, I saw this product on your website. I don't understand what this means. Can you explain to me what it is that this product does? What it is that don't go in there and say, what do you guys do? That's not setting the best first impression, but you want to be able to speak intelligently about, this is what I believe and understand to be what the company does. Please correct me if I'm wrong so that I can understand and learn from this. That shows that you are interested in the job, you're interested in what the company does, and it's a huge, huge plus to a hiring manager. Some of you, as you're going to be applying straight out of college, may not have internships, but highlight some of the work that you've done in college when you're in those interviews. I led a group project. I took an applicable course. Sorry, my neighbor who's been gone for a month just waved at me. Explain the kinds of things that you have done while you were in college, and really use that to your advantage and say, like, hey, I led a group project. These are the things I learned about managing people. These are the things I learned about managing project timelines. Those kinds of things. If someone was to come to me with that kind of, and able to articulate that, I'd hire them on the spot, to be honest. So don't feel like just that you're coming out of college, that you don't have the relevant experience. You do, you just need to use it to tell the story that you want to tell and show how great of a worker that you are, how hard of a worker that you are, and how you're able to, you're gonna be able to kind of hit the ground running once you get hired. If you have an internship, do the same thing. Highlight those skills that you learned. If it's not applicable, then talk about some of the professional lessons that you learned. I learned how to properly craft an email. I learned how to give a presentation to an executive team. I learned how to give presentations to clients. I learned how to, interact with engineering teams. Like, all of that stuff is really, really, really good to talk about when you're in an interview. But really, at the end of the day, I have had someone come to me that was like, he went to Chico State, and I learned during that interview that Chico State has Woodstock's Pizza, and he was talking about how he was a delivery guy at Woodstock's up there, and I was like, yeah, no, that's great, and I'm glad that you were able to do your college work, and you've graduated in 4 years with a mathematics degree, and you worked while you were doing that. That means that you were able to manage your time, and at the end of the day, he's like, look, man, I just need a job. I am willing to put in whatever work needs to be done. I know I have no experience here, but I really want to learn. I'm a quick learner, and I just want to help this company out. I hired him because of that kind of, I guess, vulnerability and that honesty. And he turned out to be one of the best employees I have ever hired. So don't feel like if you don't fit on paper, you're not going to get the job. Frankly, the people who have fit on paper that have joined my team have been less capable than the folks who did it. And so keep that in the back of your mind. Do not be discouraged. And the last thing that I have to say here for the do's is come prepared with questions. I would come to interviews with an entire notepad full with like 30 questions that I would kind of pick from as a bank to ask based on the conversations that I've had. If you don't ask a question during an interview, you're going to get struck out every single time. It just shows that you don't care. You're just going through the motions. Sucks. I hate interviewing. This is garbage. It doesn't reflect well on you. It actually reflects quite poorly. So be prepared to ask questions. This is the last slide here, and then we can go to questions. Don'ts. Do not try to BS your way through an answer. All of us who have been hiring folks for a while can see straight through that and know that that's kind of the way that you're going to try and wiggle out of problems and adversity when you're working here. We want people to be honest. If you do not know the answer, admit it and ask them to explain it. There's a great article that talked about Sundar Pichai. He's the current CEO of Google. This guy is a god in the tech world, right? He was applying to be a VP of engineering, and during the interview, they showed him a new product called Gmail. And they asked him, have you seen this product before? And he frankly said, no, I haven't. Can you please walk me through it? And sure enough, they walked him through it. He was able to give his feedback. He aced the interview, got the job, and now he's making like $100 million a year being the CEO of Google, right? If you do not know the answer, don't try and wiggle your way out of it. Be honest, ask them to explain it for you. That shows that you want to learn and you're not just trying to go through the motions and just get the job. Don't come unprepared with no questions to ask. Already talked about that. Don't forget to look at your interviewers' LinkedIn profiles. I know people who will literally go into their LinkedIn feed to see whether the people they're interviewing took a look at their background. Just shows the interest that you have in them, in the company, and in the role. Do not talk down during your interviews about previous employers or people that you've worked with, because that just shows that you could potentially be, that's not going to stop after the interviews. You're going to continually talk down about people, your colleagues. It reflects very poorly on you. So always be complimentary. And if there are difficult situations that they will ask you about, be honest, but don't say, oh, it was this person's fault. It was this person's fault. That's an immediate red flag. And lastly, do not be late. If you're going to be late, let everybody and anybody know that you are late and the reason why. I've been late to an interview because of traffic, because of a train's broken down. So long as you can, with time, let them know that there's an issue and what it is, you'll be okay. Do not panic. It's a scary situation being late to an interview, especially when you're looking for it for your first time. We're all human. We have emotions. We're not robots. We understand if there's an issue that causes problems that you can't be there. On the other hand, if you ghost us, you're gone. And it's a very, very small industry, and word gets out that, this person is unresponsive, does not, is not really interested in the job. And you'd be surprised who talks about that. So that's it. And now I am here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I saw the chat function pop up. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. I'm an open book. I will answer anything about UCSB, what I'm doing now, where I live. Well, not exactly where I live, but what it's like to live over here, etc.
Who we got? Any takers? I was the chat, by the way. I said, I literally said no to a candidate today because in their final round interview, they badmouthed people. Unintentionally, but yeah, bad luck. So it does happen, unfortunately. Anyone up for a question for Alexei? Please don't be shy. And if you feel better about entering in the chat, that's fine too. I
don't bite.
Alexa, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Let me turn my video here. I don't quite understand when they closed down shop and let all you go. Was that because after the merger, there was redundancy and the other company took over, or they overextended themselves, or what happened?
Yeah, so exactly what happened was Yes, there was redundancy because we had team members in San Francisco doing the same thing that folks in Raleigh were doing. But really what it came down to was when the merger was going through, our CEO was planning the growth trajectory for the business as the acquisition was happening. And it wasn't done with the proper due diligence that needed to be done. And we were missing our growth targets. And when you work for a large company that is public, that's the first thing that they're going to be looking at and the board's going to be looking at. So it was a very easy decision to eliminate the redundancy in an area of the US where salaries are much higher. And so they dumped us all out because there were folks in Raleigh who did the same work for not as much.
All right, capitalism at its best.
Yeah, right, exactly. All right, anybody
folks.
else got questions for me?
Hi, I have another question.
Yeah.
So you ended up not going to business school, that's right? Or
Yeah, that's correct.
So do you ever like regret that, or you think there's like any positions to go higher up that anything you could have learned from business school? Because sometimes I think about like business school, is that something maybe you should do like right out of undergrad, or you should get experience and then decide like what your path is?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Robin. By the way, I saw your chat here. Great to have you on here. And Jasmine, I'll get to your question in a sec as well. So to answer your question, when it comes to business school, right? One of the pieces of feedback that I received is business school is great when you're looking to make a complete career change. So if I am trying to move from advertising to consulting, or marketing to consulting, or engineering to consulting, right? That's where an MBA is going to help you. It's kind of the reset button. In my industry, in the advertising agency world, really nobody has MBAs. And even all the way up to the very, very top. And so, it was a decision that I had to think long and hard about is, am I going to give up this pursuit that I've kind of had my sights on for actually quite a while? This was not the first time that I thought about going to business school and even studying for the GMAT. But at the end of the day, I was very confident that it was not something that I needed to help me get to where I am. I was confident in my abilities to join a company and be able to move up into the ranks, and also that this was the industry that I wanted to stay in. So the other thing, to be honest, is I was thinking about going into consulting, had done some like the traveling and whatnot was consulting work. I wasn't getting paid like a consultant, but when I did speak to one of my friends who works for PwC or one of the big four, I asked him, I was like, look, do I need to do this? He's like, how much you make now? I'm not going to mention it, but he said, an associate consultant is going to make less, and you're going to pay 160 grand for your MBA. So is this something like, sure, 5 years down the road, you'll make director at a consulting firm and you'll make more than that. But is that something that you really, really, really want to do? And I couldn't answer that for myself. I couldn't confidently say, yes, that is what I need to do. But on the flip side, I was able to say, yes, I want to stay in the advertising industry. I want to join an advertising agency because I know that is an important piece that was missing from my resume and will kind of give me the same reset stamp with like companies outside the advertising agency world, like at big companies in their marketing department, where I'd be able to do the same thing. So, so you just, when you're thinking about that, don't think about it very black and white as like, this is my path, this is the path that I have to be on because someone else said it. You really need to be confident that that is what you want to do. And whether it makes financial sense too. An MBA is a very expensive piece of paper.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So the next question I saw was about what does Publicis do and how to approach working for the company if you're interested in digital marketing, social media, and strategy. So, so Publicis is a holding company in the advertising space where technically the entire advertising agency realm is dominated by three or four major holding companies. And Publicis is one of them. And they have a number of smaller advertising agencies under their umbrella where companies will contract with them for, a multi-year contract, hundreds of millions of dollars, where we manage all of their marketing efforts, from social media to content to actual advertising that you see on your screen, on NewYorkTimes.com or on YouTube or whatnot. And so, but then sometimes it's even just like general business challenges. I'm going to take an example. Disney is one of our larger clients, and we won their business right before they launched Disney Plus. And Disney came to us specifically and was like, we want this to be a smash hit when we come out, and we want at least 10 million people subscribed or signed up to subscribe before we even launch this. So we developed this entire strategy of, digital and traditional and television and all this stuff to drive, a bunch of demand for this product. And lo and behold, I think they had 17 million people sign up right when they started. So, so really advertising agencies do all sorts of cool stuff for these brands. And kind of the sky's the limit for what they want. I mean, literally brands will come to us and like, here's a problem that I'm trying to solve here. What can you do about it? Another example I'll use is a Sprouts grocery store. It's like, we need more younger folks to come into our stores, because right now the majority of people who come here are people over 55. And so we want to try and reach that younger crowd. So we developed an entire strategy around content and social media and let's see, what else did we do? And some, streaming audio, and just a bunch of other things, right, to help them achieve those kinds of business objectives. So you're interested in digital marketing, social media, and strategy, that's the place to look, is that agency world right there. Jasmine, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Awesome. Let's see. Lay's got a question. What was it that drew me to marketing and advertising rather than consulting? So I didn't really know what consulting was until I started working. That's not something that communication majors necessarily go into, because consulting, at least from the outset, if you're applying from college, they primarily recruit from Ivy League schools, people with finance degrees or science degrees. They're not necessarily looking for communications majors. So it's something that you kind of may have to work into. If you have experience, in an internship at a bank, that could be enough to get you a role there. So to answer your question, I didn't really know much about consulting or what it was when I first started looking. What I did know about marketing and advertising is thanks to Karen's amazing class and how much I loved the advertising class. I knew that based on kind of the unhappiness that I had as an accounting major, and finding something that I was super stoked to be in really was what made the decision for me, and I'm really happy for it. Lay, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-ups there? Texana wants to know there.
May have jumped up the call. Not sure yet. Looks like. Oh,
yes, it does.
Perfect.
Thank you. Awesome.
Great confirmation.
Who else has got questions for me? I'm here at your disposal.
Well, Alexei, is it fair to wrap us up, and then can they reach out to you on LinkedIn? Probably
Absolutely.
A good pitch. Please connect with Alexei on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Do your diligence, do your follow-ups, build your network.
Yeah, definitely. If I see a connection from someone where I see UCSB on the list, I'm immediately going to say hi to Kira for me, Alex. I will immediately connect with you, and I'm happy to jump on the phone with any of you guys. Should you have any questions, if you're looking for, interview help, if you got an interview at an agency, or if you're trying to look for specific, companies and organizations that you want to join, Hulu's and NBC and things like that. My company works a lot with those, major TV networks and Spotify and Pandora and Google and YouTube and Crackle for connected television and Roku and all of those companies as well. I'm happy to give you guys context there. I have connections there as well. I'm happy to make introductions if needed. If you guys see open positions there too. And one of our finest, Justin Hanna, works at Hulu. He spoke earlier as well. So he probably is the best person there for Hulu. And I would probably direct you to him. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining our session. And I look forward to hearing from you guys if you have any other questions. And thanks to the council for having me on. It was a pleasure. Like I said, who doesn't enjoy talking about themselves, right? So
Alexei is awesome as usual. Thank you everyone for joining. We will be sending out a short survey coming up here. Please note again the next upcoming sessions. Connect with Alexei on LinkedIn and the rest of the council members that were on the call, Leslie, myself, just the two on video now, but many others. And please check out our digital mentoring. I linked it in the chat as well. It's a great way to get in touch with Alexei or others for guidance. So appreciate y'all investing in yourselves.
Don't forget to download the takeaway. It has all of the bullet points for my job search and tips. So that is available to you guys. It's a Word doc as well. So that's it. Have a great evening, everybody. Have a great weekend. I know it's only Wednesday, but it's always good to think about that. And I hope to talk to everybody soon.
Have a good one.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.